The Habs are in the playoffs, and they're going to Philadelphia. Well, I mean, they would be going to Philadelphia if it wasn't for the coronavirus. That and more in this week's Hockey Inside Out. Welcome to this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out, which is being brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal. That's the one on Drummond Street, across the street from the Bell Center. Okay, joining us on this week's show, we have Jess Rusnak from CBC Daybreak, Rick Green, formerly of the NHL Montreal Canadiens, and deep in the foxhole in Toronto, Stu Cowan's joining us. How you doing, Stu?
I'm doing okay. How are you guys?
Doing all right. Last week, the Montreal Canadiens shocked the hockey world by beating the heavily favored Pittsburgh Penguins in the best-of-5 game series to earn their spot in the first round of the 2020 NHL playoffs. And all the team really needed to do to win was to have Carey Price play the best series of his life, have their defense core play flawlessly, have Nick Suzuki live up to the hype, and force Jesperi Kotkaniemi to gain 20 pounds. No big deal. What do you think the Canadiens are going to need to do to beat the Philadelphia Flyers?
A lot of the same. I mean, this team, for years we've said it, they're going to go as far as Carey Price can take them. The good news, though, about the series against the Penguins is, as much as Carey Price was their number one star, he's not the only reason they won. You know, they had some balanced scoring. The kid Suzuki and Kotkaniemi really stepped up. The top three defensemen and Brett Kulak as the number 4 defenseman also stepped up and played their game. And it's remarkable to think they won the series without Brendan Gallagher or Thomas Tatar scoring a goal, 2 leading goal scorers during the regular season, and with Powerplay that didn't score a goal. So they did some things wrong, but they did more things right. And I think the physical play was, I think, Sherratt and Weber together are 2 big physical guys, and I haven't seen Shea Weber play that physical since he's come to Montreal, especially clearing the front of the net. And I wonder how much of that is watching Brett Kulak do it and then feeling, I got to do that also. So I think that physical play by those 2 defensemen wore down Crosby and Malkin during the series, and they're going to need to do more of that against the Flyers.
And I think they have a very, very good attitude right now. Everything is quite positive. They're confident. They're not expected to, again, do great things against Philadelphia. But as we've seen before, you get on a little bit of a roll, you get a hot goalie, you get guys, and they're going to need more guys stepping up to the plate to make things happen offensively. But I think they're in a good place right now to start off on a very good positive note, with a lot of guys believing that, you know what, you never know. We'll take it game by game, and we believe that we have a chance to beat them, and that's a big part of the game today.
And I think what Dale Weiss said earlier this week, that they are the underdogs. They know that, and they're very comfortable being the underdogs in a series. And I think it's good for the Canadiens because they're not necessarily feeling any pressure on themselves. They're just happy to be there. And they're even surprised that they were able to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they want to constantly be able to prove themselves. But there's more pressure on the Flyers in this series. And I think the performance of Carey Price against the Pittsburgh Penguins starting game 1 really, sparked momentum for them, that other players were then able to step up their game. And he kind of challenged them to, guys, I'm helping you out. Now I need you to help me. And I think they're on a good roll. And if they're able to do that against the Flyers, I think that they could potentially have a good chance. But, it's the year 2020. Anything can really happen here. And I think the Canadiens are really just embracing that.
Well, as much as some Canadiens fans might be upset that the Canadiens beat the Penguins and lost out on Alexis Lafreniere, who's not going to be a New York Ranger, there's an 87.5% chance they wouldn't have got Lafreniere if they had lost in the first round. And I think the experience that these young players, Kotkaniemi, Suzuki, etc., gained in this series is going to be huge moving forward for this team. They stepped up, they played key roles, and it sort of reminds me, Rick, back in '86 when you had rookies like Brian Skrlin, Mike Lehler, all these young guys, Claude Lemieux, and the experience that they had and how much they developed from that. So I think this was a really good experience for the Canes to go through a series like that. And maybe these kids are now, especially at Kotkaniemi, saying, you know what, I can play in this league and I can be physical and I can. Jonathan Drouin spoke the other day on a conference call about how Kotkaniemi's first guy in on the puck now. He's not looking to see who's coming in with him. He's just hitting whoever it is. So I think moving forward, this series is really going to pay dividends for the Canadiens.
And I think the way the scheduling is going, they're going to need everybody, and it's a tough grind, and you've got to rely on these guys that are going to be given opportunity to make things happen. And And it's nice to see that Kotkaniemi, Suzuki, all these young kids are grabbing hold and, really, really enjoying the opportunity to see what they can do. And nothing but good things to say about them so far. It's going to be tough. You got the Philadelphia Flyers that don't play a perimeter game. They're big, they're strong, they come at you hard. But they're going to have to, Canadians are going to have to be intelligent in their play, like they did against Pittsburgh, and in being very, very solid defensively and allowing Carey Price to make that timely save that, will hopefully turn the momentum back in their favor. So it's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean,
that's interesting too. That those trades that Bergevin made before the NHL trade deadline. Nate Thompson and these guys, in some ways they hurt them, but in some ways it might help the Canadiens because it forced Claude Julien to play the young kids.
That's true, and I agree with you guys about rather having the Canadiens move on to the next round just because of the experience and the confidence that it's going to give Suzuki and Kotkaniemi. I mean, these are players we already have. To hope on a 10% chance that we're going to get some player, we've already got money in the bank here. Let's put that down and ride that. Carey Price played the best series of his NHL career. He averaged 1.67 goals against. Can you see him maintaining that same level of play against Philadelphia?
I don't see why not. That Carey Price has shown in the past that when he gets hot, it's hard to cool him off. And I think he's very motivated right now that they weren't supposed to make the playoffs and Carey Price was going to have to go back home for the summer. And then they got another chance being the 12th team to come in the East. And Carey Price showed from the past series against the Pittsburgh Penguins that he's coming here to play, that those months off they had because the pandemic shut down the league has not affected his play at all. And he's starting to look like the Carey Price that we saw a few years ago. And I think he knows the impact that he can have on his team when he is playing well and his ability to kind of get in the heads of his opponent when he's able to make some spectacular saves. So I don't see there being a drop-off in Carey Price's play.
I think he's in his zone right now, and we've seen him consistently come up with big saves at a good time. And, as we know in all the other series, goaltending is so huge in dictating who the winner and loser will be. But Carey obviously is capable. He seems to be in control. He seems to be able to be confident in knowing that he's going to get the job done. And also, those guys in front of him, those defense are doing one hell of a job in trying to keep the offense to the outside and making sure that they're there to respond to any loose pucks if there is any loose pucks. So nothing but positive again for Carey, and it's going to be battle of the goalies once again in this series.
Yeah, after the Canadiens missed the playoffs last season, when they were cleaning up their lockers, I asked Carey Price, what would you say to free agents who are thinking about maybe coming to Montreal to convince them to come? And he said, I'll tell them that my window is closing and I want to win. The only thing missing from his resume is a Stanley Cup. The Canadiens weren't going to be in the playoffs this year. They didn't deserve to be in the playoffs this year. They were a 500 team if you count the loser points, but they won 31 games and they lost 40 games. So this is like a Christmas gift for Carey Price, a playoff series that he never thought he'd be in. Now he's in it at his age and with this team. You wonder, how many more chances are the Canadiens going to make the playoffs next season? Who knows? So I think this is a real big opportunity for him, and he's stood up and he was fantastic in that series. And I don't see why he can't do the same. I don't know if at 1.67 or whatever his goals against average, he might not be able to match that, but he should be able to keep it under 2. And the goalie matchup is going to be really interesting because Carter Hart, the Flyers goalie, grew up idolizing Carey Price. So there's going to be. I think the goaltending matchup is going to be so key in this series, and the pressure is on Carter Hart. Imagine playing against your boyhood idol. So it'd be like me if I had ever made it to the NHL, which I never came close to playing against Bobby Orr. I couldn't imagine going up against Bobby Orr. I'd be in shock. So I'm sure Carter Hart, it's going to be an interesting situation for him, and I think that's something we really need to watch.
Don't you find that makes us feel old that there's an NHL goaltender who grew up idolizing Carey Price and kind of been covering Carey Price? I think 2 years, he was in the league for 2 years when I started covering him, that I was like, oh my God. But then I guess, you realize Carey Price has been around now for almost 13 years with the Habs.
Well, what makes me feel old is that I was 4 the last time the Leafs won the Cup.
I find it astounding that the Canadiens were able to finish the Flyers off in 4 games, considering the fact that their power play is so bad that they allowed more goals during their power play than they were able to produce. Can you see the Canadiens beating the Flyers with this type of detrimental power play that they've been playing with all season?
Well, I mean, I think personally they can get it turned around. I mean, there's no real secret recipe, I don't believe, to to success with the power play. They have to keep it simple, and you're just trying to get pucks through and crash the net, because there's not that many pretty goals, tic-tac-toe power play goals. So let's just get back to the basics, and you know what, it can turn around for them. And once it does, again, it breeds confidence, and you don't know where it will take them.
Canadiens' power play shockingly has been bad for so long. It's hard to explain with the talent they have. How can they be that bad? So I don't see them getting it fixed. I mean, I think it's going to continue to be a problem. They were 0 for 12 in the first series on the power play, but the Flyers were 0 for 11 on their power play in their 3-round robin games. So both teams are struggling with the power play. And I think in the playoffs, it just becomes so difficult to score on the power play because everybody's blocking shots. I mean, the puck goes to the point, a guy winds up, all 4 guys drop to the ice, and they're sacrificing their bodies and blocking shots. So it's just really, the Canadiens have enough problems scoring on the power play in the regular season. It's going to be even more difficult for them in the playoffs. But I think it's going to be difficult for the Flyers also. And that could be, the goaltending matchup I mentioned earlier is going to be huge. And the power play, I mean, whichever team can get the power play going, that could also be the deciding factor in the series.
Yeah, I don't see there just being the Habs flipping a switch against the Flyers and all of a sudden their power play is fixed. They're just going to have to figure out a way to win games without their power play. And they were able to do that last series. So, that's going to be something, I think, when the NHL season starts again in December, that they're going to have to fix. That it's really just too late. And as Stu mentioned, that this has been an issue for them throughout the entire year.
And also, Nate Thompson is going to be killing penalties for the Flyers. And he's had enough time while with the Canadiens to watch their power play struggle while sitting on the bench. So he probably there's a lot of weaknesses in the Canadiens power play, and he knows what they are.
But to give them a little bit of credit, they were able to build some momentum on certain power plays and score shortly after their power plays ended. But I would really love to see them not allow any shorthanded goals in this next series.
Unfortunately, they can't decline the penalties.
I'm going for that all freaking year. The Canadiens' top 3 defensemen, Shea Weber, Ben Sherratt, and Jeff Petrie, all played very well against Pittsburgh. Were you surprised, though, by the strong play of Brett Kulak and Xavier Ouellet, considering the fact that they missed most of training camp?
It really is surprising. I mean, Brett Kulak, you go from, Xavier Ouellet said he never even knew he had COVID. He never had any symptoms. He never felt anything. He still said, I don't even really know if I really had it. I tested positive. But Kulak did have symptoms. Kulak didn't feel well, and he was talking when he came back about how, he was trying to do some push-ups or stuff in quarantine, and he just didn't have any strength. So it's quite remarkable to see the way he's come back and played. But he also made some good comments in video conference last week saying, maybe it's because he's not he was just so focused on being ready and getting healthy that he stopped thinking about, think too much on the ice as a defenseman. You can make a lot of mistakes. So I think that maybe helped him in that regard. But again, he's a big physical body. So, the Canadiens' top 4 defensemen are all big and physical. I mentioned before, Jeff Petrie, when you see him in the locker room, he's built like an NFL defensive back. They're 4 big, strong guys, and they wore down the Penguins, and they're going to need them to do that again against the Flyers. But Kulak, kudos to him, because he's one of those guys who's sort of streaky. I think when he has a bad game and he makes a couple of mistakes, he has a hard time maybe mentally getting over it, and he's afraid, plays scared. And if you're a defenseman playing scared, I mean, Rick, you would know that. I'm sure it makes life a lot more difficult.
Well, these guys are both fairly young fairly young when it comes to games played. Under 200 games each. Right now, they're really enjoying the opportunity to jump in there and be used in different situations. So they don't want to mess that up by making mistakes. And even if they do make mistakes, you have to give credit to the staff for allowing them to go back out in situations so they don't destroy completely their confidence, so they can get back out there and try and fix where they made a little bit of the gaffe. But you've got to give those guys a lot of credit, because like you said earlier, They weren't feeling that good at the start of the whole playoffs, but they found a way to get themselves in pretty good shape, and they're contributing in a very positive way, which is making sure that they're not playing a high-risk type of game back there, being very selective, and just taking care of their defensive responsibilities, which is going to be huge in this series again.
I think these are two players just really rising to the occasion. They have something to prove as well, you know, especially if you look at Xavier Ouellet. He was named the captain of the Laval Rocket, and I remember at that press conference, it was kind of like mixed feelings because he wants to be playing in the NHL, and he knows that if he's named the captain of the AHL team, he's most likely going to be staying in the AHL for a longer period of time, and that's where management really sees him. And then he would, you know, had those COVID symptoms, so he wasn't able to have the training camp like everyone else. And then he was able to come out and have a good performance. And I think that's just what it is that you're making the best of the opportunity that you have. And so far, it's turned out well for these two players.
And he's also, you know, that's also a French-Canadian guy playing for the Canadiens, and I think there's something to that. You know, you look back at the last two times the Canadiens won the Stanley Cup, they had a lot of local guys on the team, and I think for a guy like Xavier Ouellet, you know, playing in front of his family and friends, and you know, the pressure of playing in Montreal that wears some people down, other people can thrive on it, and good for Ouellet. I mean, it's nice to see a guy like that, as you mentioned, Jess. You know, I'm sure he was a good pick to be captain of the Rocket because he's a solid guy, he's a good leader. But yeah, he didn't want to be captain of the Rocket. He wanted to be playing for the Canadiens. So it's nice to see good things happen to good people, and this is an example of that.
And I always find too that it's nice to see these guys selecting time when they can jump in on the offense. I mean, I know a number of times Kulak stands out in my mind that he's a big part of the offense, and he's not forcing situations where he's getting caught out of position. He's actually helping out on rushes and, you know, jumping in there when the time is right. So they're going to have to continue using that intelligent play and continue to you know, do their part in helping out offensively. And it's so far it's nice to see them doing the things that they're doing.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed the last couple of seasons, Rick, that's really changed. You used to see when the other team was breaking out of their zone, the Canadiens would leave, the defenseman would leave the blue line really early and now make it like an easy breakout. Whereas now you see the defenseman pitching, you know, when the pucks are rimmed around the boards, you see the defenseman pinching in so much more, keeping the puck in. And I think a lot of that has to do with hiring Luke Richardson as the defensive coach.
You know, I can't remember the last time the Canadiens had a team in the playoffs where we talked about them physically wearing down the opposition. That's exciting for me because that's always been Montreal's problem for years. So I think that's going to be exciting to watch how they're going to employ that against Philadelphia. All right, series predictions against Philadelphia. Jess, what do you think?
You know what? Let's ride this Habs momentum. I'm going to say Habs in 6.
I'm agreeing with you there. That's my prediction as well. Stu?
Well, I'm the guy who predicted that the Penguins would sweep the Canadiens in the first round, 3 straight. I didn't think the Canadiens would win a game.
You know,
I'm not going to predict the sweep this time, but I'm going to take the Flyers in 6 games. I just think the Flyers are too deep and too strong. The only way I can see the Canadiens winning is if Carter Hart struggles in goal with the Flyers.
What do you think, Rick?
I think you know, I think I'll give the Canadiens a couple of games, but I think Philadelphia in so many areas are much stronger, and I think that they'll ultimately do the 6-game thing and move on. But you never know.
But as Marc Bergevin says, anything can happen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the experts have spoken, and that's all the time that we have for this week's show, which has been brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street. That's the one across the street from the Bell Center. What is your series prediction against the Philadelphia Flyers? Let us know in the comment section below. My name is Adam Susser, and we'll see you back here next week.